Hello, and welcome to another video from 3.5 Archive. Today, we're going to be doing our 69th D&D 3.5 Prestige class review, and we're going to be looking at the Eldritch Disciple from the Complete Mage Sourcebook. Eldritch Disciples are characters that blend divine spellcasting with warlock invocations, and they synergize the two for some kind of greater power. And this Prestige class is the counterpart, the divine counterpart to the Eldritch Theurge, which blended arcane spellcasting with warlock invocations, and they follow a general trend or archetype of prestige classes like the Mystic Theurge, Arcane Hierophant, Ultimate Magus, and others that basically advance two types of spellcasting at once, or in this case, one type of spellcasting along with invocation use. So what does it take to become an Eldritch Disciple? Well, you're going to need 8 ranks in Knowledge Religion and 4 ranks in Knowledge of the Planes. That shouldn't be too hard. And you're going to need to be able to cast 2nd level divine spells, as well as be able to use least invocations. So you need to have at least 1 level in Warlock, or potentially Dragonfire Adept, but it will be much better if you are a Warlock in this case, just due to how the features of the Prestige class interact. They're not going to work well with the Dragonfire Adept. You're also going to need to be able to turn or rebuke undead, so you're going to need to have cleric levels for sure. And you also must worship a chaotic or evil deity, so you can worship a Litamara or Nerul or Erythnal or something of that sort. But you definitely can't be walking around as a cleric of Palor slinging Eldritch Blasts. That's not going to work. But that's fine. Overall, this Prestige class's requirements, if you take it as a given that you are going into this as a Warlock cleric multiclass, they're not restrictive at all. You're going to meet all these prerequisites pretty much automatically. It's just 2 skill requirements. So while in some ways this Prestige class is very restrictive, if you're going into this Prestige class, it's because you already have the levels that it wants. So we're going to rate this one lightly restrictive. I mean, if you have a low intelligence, if you dumped your intelligence stat, then you might have a little bit of trouble meeting the skill requirements. But otherwise, you should be fine getting into this Prestige class, no problem. You will, of course, want some set aside for concentration, but if you just play a human, you'll have the extra skill ranks you need. The example character here is a Cleric 3, Warlock 3 before going into Eldritch Disciple. So unless there's something I'm missing here, maybe that character just needed more time to get all the skill ranks in while still preserving a maxed out concentration rank. Who knows? But from what it seems to me, you're able to get into this after level 5 if you are maybe a Cleric 3, Warlock 2. So let's look at what you get from the Eldritch Disciple. You get a D8 hit die, you're going to get 3/4 base attack, so you're going to get an upgrade to your hit die from Warlock, at least it takes the better of the 2 hit dice. You're going to get good fortitude and good will saves, so you're preserving the Cleric's decent saving throws. It has a good bonus in the 2 most important saves. And you're going to get 2+ intelligence modifier skill points per level, with a nice smattering of skills that reflects both of your class's skill lists. So at level 1, you're going to get +1 to your invocation using class. So that means that all of your invocations, including your Eldritch Blast, are going to improve by 1 level. And this is going to happen for every single level of this Prestige class. However, at first level, you don't get an improvement to your divine spellcasting. So if you come into this as a Cleric 3, Warlock 2, then after your first level in this, you're going to be effectively a Cleric 3, Warlock 3. And then from there, you're going to go through 9 more levels. And then by the time you are level 15, you are going to be the equivalent of a level 12 Cleric, level 12 Warlock. So you're going to be behind a bit. This is just like Mystic Theurge, Ultimate Magus, and that sort of thing. And there's plenty of debate to be had if you can get through a campaign effectively while not having access to the highest possible level spell slots. And usually when we look at Prestige classes on this channel that don't give you more spellcasting, it's less because falling behind immediately means you can't keep up with the challenges of that level, and more because the things that you are giving up your spellcasting for just aren't worth how powerful those extra levels of spellcasting are. But leveling up 2 spellcasting classes at once, or 1 invocation using one, of course, which is a different beast entirely, there's a different debate to be had there, as you are getting 2 sets of less powerful options instead of 1 very powerful option or an option that's comparatively almost useless. So looking at it from that perspective, let's look at how we should think about the Eldritch Disciple's spellcasting and invocation use, because invocations are usable at will, they're not limited per day, and one of the advantages of playing a Mystic Theurge type character is being able to cast as many spells as you want, not worry about running out of spell slots, and you give up your higher level spells in return. And this is generally not a good strategy at all, because you're going to be getting into around 4 fights per day anyway. You might as well use those higher level spells and win the fights before your enemy can kill you, instead of wasting your time casting just regular fireballs at level 12 or 13 as a character. And this compounds that issue by the fact that the warlock already has at-will abilities, so you're just stretching, you're just giving yourself too many resources to spread over too few encounters per day, even more so. So you're just going to have an absolute glut of options and staying power. This might be good for a campaign where you just never get a chance to rest, but in such a campaign, the rest of your party's going to die, and then you're probably going to get picked off by whatever's left. So it's a little bit difficult. I mean, I suppose you can keep your party going with more healing spells than a warlock could, but again, it's not really going to be an effective class combination in most cases. But if you like having the flexibility to switch between an Eldritch Blast one round and a Holy Ward or Flame Strike the next, then this is a great prestige class for you. Let's look at the features that it gives you, because that's going to make it a little bit more attractive to you. So you do get to improve your Turn or Rebuke Undead ability. You add your levels in Eldritch Disciple to your Cleric levels for determining your turning damage and all that. So that's good. You also get Gift of the Divine Patron. You get one at 1st level, 4th, 7th, and 10th. So you're going to only get 4 of these gifts, and you get to select them from along a list. And there are quite a few options here. There's a total of 8 options that you can pick from. So we'll go through these. You gain a Sacred Gift of Power, and you can spend one of your Turn or Rebuke Undead attempts as a swift action to activate the chosen power. So your options are, for example, Corrupting Blast, and all of these are usable as swift actions, which is important. Corrupting Blast, in place of applying an Eldritch Essence invocation to your Eldritch Blast, you can change it to a Corrupting Blast. Note that an Eldritch Essence and a Blast shape are separate, and you can apply one of each to your blast, so that's important to know if you want to do a Chain Blast and hit multiple foes, which is a good strategy if you are fighting multiple foes. It's actually one of the Warlock's more effective options. If you hit, in addition to the normal effect, the blast applies a penalty on the target's will saves equal to half your class level, and it lasts until the end of your next turn, basically. And this is a really great option, especially if you're in a party with an enchanting or illusion-focused wizard. Being able to hit potentially a bunch of foes at higher levels, or even just one, and give them a penalty of, anywhere from 1 to 5 on their next will save can be game-changing. This can really help take somebody out of the fight, and there's no saving throw against this ability itself. That'd be maybe a little bit redundant, but being able to do this is going to be a great way to either enable your fellow party members or even enable your own cleric spells or other warlock invocations. This is a great option. You can also get damage reduction. You can gain temporary damage reduction overcome by cold iron equal to half your class level. It stacks with your warlock damage reduction, and it lasts for 3 plus your charisma modifier rounds. So you're going to have a good charisma if you're coming into this as a warlock, so this will probably last a while, at least for one fight. And using up a turning attempt to do it is probably okay, because unless you're fighting a lot of undead, those turn attempts are just going to sit there. However, damage reduction is kind of overrated in a lot of ways. It requires you to be getting attacked, and a lot of time you're going to want to avoid having that happen to you. You may be a cleric, but you are also a warlock and not the toughest character in the world. You're probably not going to have the best constitution since you need to max out your wisdom and charisma. So while it's okay, and if you for some reason want to play a melee focused build with this, there are options for that with one of the later features as well, but the damage reduction is just mediocre. If I was going to assign, star ratings to these, I would give the Corrupting Blast 4.5 stars. I would give the damage reduction 2 stars. The next option is Fearful Glare. This lets you render a single living creature within 30 feet of you shaken for 1 round. And they get a will save of DC 10 plus your class level, plus your charisma modifier. And it has to be against a creature whose hit dice are less than or equal to your character level. Now, this potentially is a very strong option due to what's called fear stacking, which lets you apply the shaken condition multiple times to a creature, as long as it's from different abilities, and that will then turn it into the frightened condition and then the panicked condition, which will keep the creature from fighting you effectively at all. And that's obviously a lot stronger than just having a creature be shaken. The downside of this is that the hit dice limit makes it prohibitive for a lot of encounters, especially considering if you're fighting just one creature, it probably does have more hit dice than you. And if you're fighting multiple creatures, then the power of this ability is diluted. The upside is that it is a swift action, but another downside is that the DC maxes out at 15 plus your charisma modifier, which is going to be a lot weaker than most of your spells are going to be for pretty much your entire career. And your best alternative for applying the shaken condition again is something like the Doom spell, which is going to be a much lower save DC. So you're better off just casting some sort of fear-based spell in most cases. Fearful Glare has the potential to be really good just because, again, it's a swift action, but it's likely to be a waste of a swift action, and that's going to prevent it from getting more than maybe 3 stars, unfortunately. There's also the option of Fiendish Resistance. You can gain resistance to acid and fire equal to 10 plus your class level. It stacks with your energy resistance from being a warlock, and it lasts for a number of rounds equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier. And you have to have an evil deity to select this gift. Fire and acid damage actually come up a fair bit. Acid is generally considered one of the best options to throw against an enemy because they are unlikely to have any sort of acid resistance or immunity. But acid is probably one of the more common damage types thrown at players in terms of, energy types, because of all of the creatures with some kind of caustic spit that they have, like an Ankeg or something like that. But it's good to have this up your sleeve, but this probably shouldn't be the first gift that you choose. This should be one that you pick if you definitely can't think of something else. It's probably about equal to the damage reduction, so I would give it 2 stars, maybe 2.5. There's also the Healing Blast option. This one is interesting. In place of applying an Eldritch Essence invocation to your Eldritch Blast, you can change it into a Healing Blast. So this will heal living creatures instead of damaging them, and it'll heal the same amount as the damage. And then against undead, it will do damage as normal, and then have no effect on constructs or objects. And you have to have a non-evil deity to select this gift. So the Healing Blast is really great if it's combined with the Chain Blast or some kind of effect that turns your blast into an area, and then it works a little bit like Channel Energy does for Pathfinder clerics, where essentially it's an area of effect that it's positive energy, so it will heal your allies and hurt undead. So this will be pretty situational, but it will allow you to turn your turn undead attempts into healing. There's a lot of devotion feats that do the same kind of thing, but this is a good enough option, and if your campaign features undead, and a lot of campaigns, almost every campaign is going to have at least some undead, so it's very unlikely that this will be completely useless. In an undead-focused campaign, this will be pretty great, although oftentimes undead are going to be doing other stuff to your party that hit point damage isn't going to heal. So I would give this one 3 stars. It is situational, but it is nice to be able to do 2 things at once. There's also the Protective Aura option. This will allow you to surround yourself with a magic circle against evil, lasting a number of rounds equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier. You need to have a good aligned deity to select this gift, so you're going to have something like Coraline Lorathian. Imagining a cleric of Coraline Lorathian is kind of strange, but I suppose it's technically possible. And Magic Circle against evil is nice. It is again a situational effect, but it has a lot more protective benefits rather than just healing. And protecting generally tends to be better than healing, seeing as healing is a reactive thing. It means something's already gone wrong. And while this isn't the greatest protective option, it's at least decent enough to earn it 2.5 or 3 stars. Strength of Will will give you a bonus equal to half your class level on your next save to resist a mind-affecting spell or ability, and the effect lasts for a number of rounds equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier. So you're going to have to do this at the start of a fight, but if you're up against a wizard that looks like he's ready to send some enchantment spells your way, or if you're up against a monster like an Alep or something like that, then once you get your turn, you can just throw this right on yourself and get up to a +5 on your will save, which can be game-changing. And it lasts long enough that it should last for whole combat, and giving up a turn undead attempt for that kind of benefit is going to be almost never a bad idea, as long as you have at least some idea of what you're fighting to decide whether or not to use this. So I would give this one 4 stars. It's excellent. It's definitely worth prioritizing alongside something like Corrupting Blast, but even that requires you to have some sort of follow-up, you or somebody in your party. So, Strength of Will definitely worth 4 stars. Wild Frenzy is the last option. It gives you a +2 on attack and damage rolls with melee weapons and with Eldritch Blasts, along with temporary hit points equal to twice your caster level, or your class level, sorry. This is going to last 3 plus your charisma modifier rounds, and you must have a chaotic deity to select this gift. And being able to do this for a decent number of times per day, you can go into probably every combat encounter with this, given that you're going to have a good charisma, a lot of turning attempts to burn. And this will make up for your lower base attack bonus. It'll make up for your Eldritch Blast being a little bit behind. It won't quite make up for the effectively 2 dice of Eldritch Blast that you'd be losing from going into Cleric with this class, but it will make up some of the gap, and it will also give you some temporary hit points to keep you alive. You won't have too much trouble with that, given that you are a Cleric with heavy armor proficiency and you have at least decent hit dice. But again, as said before, your Constitution probably will suffer from having to max out your Wisdom and Charisma, so you're not going to be the tankiest character by yourself. So this is another good option. I would give this one 4.5, arguably 5 stars, just for how applicable it's going to be in pretty much every combat scenario. So those are the gifts of the Divine Patron. If I were to go into this prestige class, I would probably pick Wild Frenzy first, and then my next choices would be either Strength of Will or Corrupting Blast, probably prioritizing Strength of Will. I would then choose Corrupting Blast, although it depends on your character build. If you want to get in those mind-affecting spells and abilities at lower levels, and you're doing it yourself, lower levels are when they're going to be the most effective, and that will save penalty will matter the most. So you might want to take that one first. It really depends on your character. After that, Damage Reduction, Fiendish Resistance, or Healing Blast are all decent options. Protective Aura is there too, but you also could just prepare that spell or have an ally prepare it. So that is how I'd prioritize the gifts of the Divine Patron. There's definitely some good options here, but by themselves they're not spectacular. Wild Frenzy is good, but again, keep in mind you could have just played a regular Warlock and you would have gotten an even better benefit than that, except for maybe the bonus on attack rolls, but you could have afforded to have a better dexterity since you're not going to be maxing out your Wisdom. So overall, the gifts are decent options. They help, spice up the prestige class so that's not just a clone of Mystic Theurge, which would make it barely worth taking. However, the next feature is the Eldritch Spellweave. Beginning at level 5, you can apply an Eldritch Essence invocation other than Great Reach Blast or Spell Blast, of course, to any divine spell that affects a target, or that requires a melee or ranged touch attack. So something like the spell Bolt of Glory, if you're able to cast it, which does a lot of d12s of damage to evil outsiders and undead and the like. The spell's level must be at least as high as the level of the Eldritch Essence. Those each come with their own effective levels. So for example, you can only apply Hellrime Blast to a spell of 4th level or higher, and then if the Eldritch Essence requires a saving throw, use the normal save DC for that essence. This is going to be basically a meta magic effect, so it's going to increase the spell's casting time to 1 full round, as stated here in the ability. If the spell already does take a full round, then it takes an extra full round action to cast with this. You would only choose 1 target if the spell has multiple targets, and you can use this ability number of times per day equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier, which means you're going to be using it a lot. And Eldritch Spellweave is similar to the ability that Eldritch Theurge gets that allows them to apply blast or essence invocations to their spells. And this can be really great. So for some examples of what you can do with this, the Frightful Blast allows you to put on your spell the additional effect of the target has to make a will save or become shaken for 1 minute. Applying this to the Doom spell could force them to make 2 different saves, and if they fail both, then they end up frightened for 1 minute with no real chance of breaking out of it. That can be a real encounter ender right there. Sickening Blast, you could put on the spell and then force them to make an additional Fortitude save or become sickened. The Beshadowed Blast could have your target of your spell become blind for a round. You could use Brimstone Blast to change a damage spell into fire damage and potentially catch a foe on fire. A Hellrime Blast could potentially cause a foe to take a penalty to dexterity, as well as changing it into cold damage. You could do a Baneful Blast that would deal extra damage against a specific creature type. A Deteriorating Blast, you could have a spell additionally lower a target's damage reduction, which can be really helpful to your fighter friends. A Bewitching Blast can make somebody confused for a round, so you could put this on one of your spells and have the target also have to save or be confused for a round. Noxious Blast, you could put on a spell to make them make a Fortitude save or be nauseated. Repelling Blast makes them make a Reflex save or be knocked back. Penetrating Blast gives you a bonus on checks to overcome spell resistance and can also lower the target's spell resistance. And when you eventually get to Dark Invocations, which will be a while with this prestige class thrown in, something like Utter Dark Blast could allow you to attach more negative levels to Enervation or something like that. There are all sorts of options, and being able to apply an additional effect to a debilitating spell helps you take advantage of the, action economy, so to speak. And this is really big because a big downside of this class is that it doesn't take advantage of this action economy where it makes the most out of each turn. It's really focused on conserving resources throughout a long adventuring day. So doing this really boosts the power of your spells, and that's a major game changer for this prestige class. It's a huge part of what makes it great. Finally, at level 10, you gain Timeless Body. This is the capstone alongside your last gift of the Divine Patron, and at 10th level, the divine power of your patron infuses you with eternal vigor and you no longer age. And this is just kind of a flavor benefit, but it is nice. It's, just like Timeless Body from the Druid. You're still going to die. It doesn't make you immortal, but if your campaign does go on a long time, I suppose it's a nice feature to have. So we can pretty much ignore that feature and really just focus on the Eldritch Spellweave, which allows you to effectively get free meta magic effects on your cleric spells, and the Gift of the Divine Patron, which gives you various abilities that you can channel your turn undead attempts into. So overall, the Eldritch Theurge gives you an outlet for a situational cleric ability, and it gives you enhancements to your cleric spells in combat, letting your offensive spells get a little bit extra status effect to them of some kind. And while it's difficult to get into the Eldritch Disciple, I know that I said that the requirements aren't very restrictive, but that's assuming that you're going to be multi-classing Warlock and Cleric, which is not a common choice. So if you're doing that, then this is a really good payoff. It's definitely worth it. I would give the Eldritch Disciple 4 stars for concept and 4 stars for execution. It's definitely better than something like Mystic Theurge that just hands you double spellcasting advancement without any sort of extra benefit. And while the Ultimate Magus does have those sorts of benefits, I don't think it quite measures up to something like the Eldritch Disciple. So it would be arguable that this is a better prestige class, not necessarily related to the multi-class combination that it's based off of, but just in terms of the strength of the features it gives you. It's a really excellent class and definitely one worth recommending. It is absolutely a build-around. You're not going to be able to just waltz into this, but that's to be expected. That's part of the class's core concept, so we really can't hold that against it. So that'll be about it for this D&D 3.5 Prestige class review. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and so on. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time here on 3.5 Archive.